Welcome to the special guest host series of the Trauma Therapist Podcast, where I'm going to be handing over the mic to some incredible guest hosts. In each episode, you'll hear fresh perspectives and unique insights to inform and inspire you, and all the while, keeping the heart of this podcast alive. So sit back and enjoy. All right, very excited to have as my guest host for this episode, Lisa Danylchuk. Lisa is just so freaking inspiring. I love her, loved interviewing her, and really appreciate what she's doing in the field with yoga and trauma, and it's the reason why I invited her. She's a licensed psychotherapist and founder of the Center for Yoga and Trauma Recovery. A graduate of UCLA and Harvard University, her work has pioneered the field of trauma-informed yoga and transformed her understanding of embodiment practices and therapeutic work. She's written 3 books, most recently, Yoga for Trauma Recovery. She created the Yoga for Trauma online training program, the first online training in trauma-informed yoga. And she hosts the How We Can Heal podcast, featuring interviews with leaders in trauma, dissociation, and healing. You can listen to her podcast and learn more about her at howwecanheal.com. That's howwecanheal.com.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we are so lucky to have Dr. Jennifer Gómez with us. Dr. Gómez is an assistant professor at Boston University and the author of The Cultural Betrayal of Black Women and Girls, a Black feminist approach to healing from sexual abuse, published by the American Psychological Association. She is the creator of cultural betrayal trauma theory and has so many accolades that I could take an entire podcast episode going through them. So I'll wrap it there. Please look into her work. Your website is?
So I'm Jennifer M. Gómez. So the website is jmgomez.org.
Love it. Yes, jmgomez.org. And today we're going to talk a little bit about her theories, give you a good introduction to them. So let's dive in. Dr. Gómez, can you tell us what cultural betrayal trauma theory is?
Sure. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And it's always a thrill when we get to connect. So cultural betrayal trauma theory, it's a Black feminist, critical race, and scientific framework for understanding why violence in marginalized communities is uniquely harmful. And so for today, we'll focus on within the Black community. So when there's violence in the Black community. The general idea then is because of this mean, yucky racism, some Black people develop what I call intracultural trust. It's just solidarity with the in-group. And so when violence happens there within the Black community or between Black people, then it violates that intracultural trust. And so then it's this cultural betrayal. So that this within group violence is this cultural betrayal harm. And then the violence is called cultural betrayal trauma. And then I propose that these cultural betrayal traumas, this within group traumas, violence, abuse, is associated with stuff like mental health that we're typically think about, like dissociation or PTSD, as well as cultural outcomes that we don't always think about, things like internalized prejudice. Yeah. Lastly, there's also a branch of, if we think of like intracultural trust as positive, of like this solidarity, intracultural pressure is the negative transformation of intracultural trust. And that intracultural pressure is essentially like keep problems in house. Because of this big, mean racism, we don't want to draw negative attention to ourselves. And so if you're a girl and a Black male has raped you, then do not tell anybody, because you're going to make all of us look bad, and there could be lethal consequences from police, for instance.
Lethal, right? Like that's the level that it's at.
Like you could die.
I so appreciate the depth and the naming of this that you do. Like I've shared this with you before, that when I first heard the term cultural betrayal trauma, I assumed it was the larger culture betraying a certain group of people. And it's more complex than that. It's right. It's like, that's already there. Yes. Yeah. And then there's this trust that develops like, okay, well, hey, we're similar. We share backgrounds. We're sharing this struggle within a certain system. So we have a sense of connection and trust. And then when that's broken, now where do we go? And when you bring it to the point where, it's not always safe to, or it's not perceived as, and realistically not safe to like call authorities for help. Well, then what? Right. And I think we can all just hearing that and thinking about that for ourselves go, oh, like, where do you go? where do you go at that point? How does someone heal when we all know we heal in relationship and we heal in community? And so where is the community? I'm curious, just a brief follow-up question. When people are in that place of where do I go? Have you found places that they do go? Are there like subgroups within like groups of people who have also been culturally betrayed within that group that can then provide support?
Yes. So we talk in the cultural betrayal of Black women and girls. I have a chapter on radical healing in the Black community. And so I have a chapter on culturally competent trauma therapy as well, institutional courage to change the world, to systems level change, but also this radical healing chapter to kind of answer, at least start to answer this question of like, if these other formal places aren't safe, where do we go? And in that chapter, I talk about, this is pulling from ABPSI, the Association of Black Psychologists, their emotional emancipation circles that they have. For instance, when the white police officer murdered Michael Brown, they went to Ferguson and then held these EECs to promote healing. And so I've been thinking lately about what if we had like EEC, emotional emancipation circle inspired spaces, maybe within one gender, like so for women or across genders, and how can we leverage this intercultural trust, this solidarity in order for good, right? Like not every Black person is violent, and how can we heal together, come back together after this cultural betrayal breach? Also talk a fair amount about how do we address this stuff in our families? What is the role of Black men who are not abusive? Like what is their role in addressing this issue? As well as what can the individual do? Because a lot of times we can try to find safety, including psychological safety in other places. But when we ourselves are unsafe within our own bodies, within our own psyches, that can be fairly difficult. So also how do we focus on ourselves and find safety within ourselves?
It makes me think of Bethany Brand's work, the title of Finding Solid Ground, right? Finding solid ground within yourself initially. And then from there, finding connections that are helpful. And then I also always think of this. There was like a ecological example where there was a lake that had like a toxic spill in it and they put healthy algae in it. And that helped it to like re-find a healthy balance. And that's what I'm thinking when you talk about these smaller groups of safe spaces, like how do we reintroduce safety into a place where there's been a lot of harm and there's been a lack of safety? So there's so much depth to your work. And I know even we could spend more than an hour on each chapter of your book. Even one of the things I love that you share that I always quote you on, actually, I just did a training this morning for a colleague in Denmark, shouted you out, dreamstorming. So what is dreamstorming and why is it important in this context?
Yeah, so I think we can understand dreamstorming by what it's not. So dreamstorming is not brainstorming. So brainstorming is like we live in this awful, violent, oppressive world. And so what can we do? Like let's sit down and think and brainstorm together on what we can do to address this crazy violence, this inequity, inequality, and so on. Dreamstorming is saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and envision a world that is perfectly equal and perfectly peaceful. And what is that world like? And then through dreamstorming, how do we reverse engineer it back so that we become closer to that world? And so the difference here is like, if we brainstorm, and I came up with the term dreamstorming in 2019 with colleagues, and we were trying to figure out how to address campus sexual violence. And every answer we got took us further out of like, well, you have to address the culture and the context and the racism and the intersectional oppression. And so it just became, for me, impossible of like, well, this will never end because the problem is steeped within all these layers of inequality and societal inequality and violence and erasure. And then it was like, oh, I'm trying to brainstorm solutions in this world. And so I'm getting stuck. So how do I dreamstorm a different world? And then when I think about strategies to get there, the hope is will move us away from places that might address the harm now, but that continue the status quo. Addressing the harm now, like for rape prevention, is like women walk in groups. So go to the bathroom in pairs and like put your hand over your drink if you're at a bar. Like that may or may not be helpful to you in this moment for this weekend, but it certainly is going to continue the status quo that as women, we should restrict our freedoms. And if you don't restrict our freedoms, then we might get raped, and that's a consequence. So to the extent that that is or is not helpful in this state, I do believe it's furthering the status quo of inequality. And so dreamstorming then would not require that we walk in pairs or cover our drinks, et cetera, all the things that we've heard. It would be, what if it just wasn't okay to rape anybody? Men to women, men to girls, but also women. You also can't rape anybody either. If it was just this expansive thing, and then now what solutions are we coming up with? They're probably going to look a little bit different and get us closer to this, hopefully, like dream-stormed equal world.
I love what you described because it's such a practical bridge, and it flips on its head the way we normally do things, which is let's brainstorm solutions. Okay, that's good. And harm reduction is important. And taking the next little step is something I celebrate. And can we actually connect with the other side of this? Not only the other side of the problem, but like the fully healed manifestation. And it can even be sort of utopian, right? You're like fully peaceful. There is no rape. And people are like, blows your mind. But like, can you and I in this moment agree that like that could be possible? Like, and can we reverse engineer? Like there's such a grounded practicality to going to the solution, going to the dream storm and pulling information and pulling practice and pulling ideas from there. Because it's kind of like, I don't know, there's, I'm sure, a million quotes about this of like, you can't solve the problem with the same consciousness that created it. There's a quote like, I'm not sure who it is. Maybe I'll find it later, but it's that, right? Like we're in the same consciousness of the problem when we're trying to go like, well, put your hand over your drink. Like, well, that's not really liberation. That might prevent a roofie from slipping in. Hopefully, I don't know, but like it's a long-term solution for the many layers that we're talking about, that as soon as you start unpacking problems like this, people get overwhelmed, but and it's not a bypass either. It's not, let's just go to La La Land and live there. It's like, here's the gnarly tangled solution. Here's the gnarly tangled problem. Here's the vision. And like, let's feed the present with the vision. So I love it so much. And like I said, just quote you on it all the time, celebrate it, appreciate it. Thank you so much for bringing that term to us and your colleagues that it came together with. Thanks to them.
Yeah. And I'll also say just quickly that for myself, like there's healing in the dreamstorm process, because it's like to say like, oh, there's a world that could exist where I would never be raped. I would never be discriminated against. It's a little bit mind-boggling and a little bit mind-blowing. And to be like, oh, this on a natural course of affairs, that some of us more likely to be discriminated against and sexually assaulted and raped than other people. Like all of this, even though we know, or we can know, this isn't the way it has to be. Emotionally, we believe it's the way it has to be because it's the way it's always been for as long as we can tell. And dreamstorming, it's kind of like an act of liberation, of enacting a difference. And in the cultural betrayal of Black women and girls, I do this with 3 examples. We go through institutional betrayal, terribleness, institutional courage, how to make it better in the here and now, and then dreamstorming. If this whole terribleness wasn't an issue, what would that be like? And what would need to be in place to have that be true? Like it's a difficult exercise, but a liberating one.
A liberating and, like you said, a healing one. Like I think a lot about resourcing. How do we resource ourselves when there's a trigger or there's trauma or there's something really big that we're processing? Oh, we connect with, something peaceful in our environment, or we recall a moment of nurturing or things like that. Right. And we can dreamstorm to actually like get this little taste of, whoa, like how would I stand in that world? Like what would be different? I can feel it when you just say it. Like I get tingles in my shoulders and like there's this energy like, wow, what if? How would that feel in my body? And I think when you talk about liberation from these really oppressive structures that we deal with a ton in the US, they're all throughout the world and they're different conglomerations. But if we can use our mind and hearts to transcend that for a moment, we embody it for a moment, our physiology changes. And that's actually really empowering and really practical and real. And I know we don't like have I was I was dreamstorming the other day. I was like, one day our phones are going to have like a scanner for our energy and for our neurons. We're going to just like look at the phone and it's going to be like low serotonin. We don't have a way to like make it really concrete right now and see it with a scanner, but we can feel that physiological difference, right? Like I could feel it just now as you were talking about this world where no one has to be discriminated against or raped. Like, whoa. And that's so basic. Like we have to go, oh man, just to not be raped. Like, is that really our end all be all? But wow, that would be amazing. That would be really powerful.
Yeah.
And how do we stand in that world? And how does it shift us? I feel like it does already, just thinking and talking about it. So I feel like there's a lot of power in not only the practicality, but the connection of dreamstorming, the connection within ourselves that we really actually shouldn't be treated this way. Like people really weren't. My studies of biology and anthropology, I don't think we were really wired to be neglected and abused. Like we're wired to connect and feel healthy connections. So there's something natural about it in my experience.
Yeah. And it means that there's like a freedom that we can find in the meantime. So in the meantime that we're not living in this dream-stormed world that we're imagining and envisioning, like we can have these moments of freedom inside ourselves. And in the cultural portrayal of Black women and girls, I talk about like a free writing exercise where Nakia, a Black woman who's been sexually abused in this cultural portrayal business, pulls from Nina Simone and like, what is free to you? And does a free write on it and imagines like this world where like nothing exists, but like myself and my psyche and my soul. And like in this moment, I'm free. Later on today, I will not be free again, when I go back out there into the world or whatever, or I deal with the traps of my own memories and my own trauma. But in this very moment, I'm free. And how can I come back to that moment and continuously come back to that moment? It's a buck against the power that oppression and violence has over us.
Yes. Yes. God, I love you. You're just so good. So good. How can people, practically speaking, support the healing of Black women and girls? So I know there's often we're chewing on these big concepts, big societal harm done over time. And I know sometimes people are like, well, what do I do now? I think the Dreamstorm helps us pull that down. Is there any thread from the Dreamstorm that you'd like to share today of how listeners can support, whether they're Black women and girls themselves or they're not? Mm-hmm. How can we invest in this Dreamstorm and bring it to life?
Yeah, I think so. The root cause of cultural portrayal and the harm of cultural portrayal is racism, in this case, and then also intersectional oppression. So like racism and sexism and more interlocking. And so then we have to be tackling those things. So in our efforts in our clinics to be anti-racist, et cetera, from Kim Crenshaw's like intersectionality frame, it makes me think of political intersectionality and representational intersectionality, meaning if in our clinic we have, let's say, like a culturally competent training so we can work with Black people, and then we also have like a violence training, who are those things targeted for? Like probably Black men and probably white women. And then you have this political intersectionality of Black women falling in the void of like the cultural competency training didn't really get at it, and neither did the violence training actually. And so if you're looking at like an intersectionality frame, a great question is like, who is missing? Who is missing? Not here. On our pamphlets for our clinic, for our domestic violence clinic, is it white women or is it white women's stories or white women's lenses on what DV looks like? So who is missing? To the extent that there are Black women there, are their voices up there? Are they the same? Do they have the same or more weight? So like who is missing and who is de-amplified can get us closer from like an intersectionality lens. I think for white people, hi white people, I think I'll speak to you directly of the owning the solutions. And so what do I mean? I feel like as a person who's not white, that white people can sort of be trapped of like, if you do something, you're overtaking the cause or you're speaking for Black people in a way that's problematic, et cetera. And then if you don't do something, then you're getting your hand slapped because you're not doing something. So I think what I would love to see more, and that is very concrete, is to work in collaboration with Black women, like actual collaboration, and to own the solutions. And so something I heard a lot in summer 2020 was like, Jennifer, are you okay? You know, like the violence against Black people is so high, et cetera, et cetera. And in my head, I'm like, I get it. But also, why aren't you disturbed? These are your people and your systems who are murdering us in public. We are human just like you. So why aren't you as disturbed by this? Why isn't it your issue then to solve? Instead of just, it's a Black person's issue and you want to support me in this Black issue. It's y'all's issue. And you need to talk to your people and your systems to fix the issue. And I think a change in that onus and not overtaking the cause, working collaboration, being consultation, being strategic, but not being afraid to speak up with your in-group, with your powers to change things.
There's so much connection in that, right? There's the collaboration, there's the owning the problem. This is ours. This isn't somebody else's. This isn't how are you, it's how are we? What do we do about this? It makes me think of, I was having a conversation about DARVO, deny attack, reverse victim and offender with Jennifer Fried. I was having a conversation about that recently, and someone wrote back and said, yeah, rather than like blaming whose fault is this, I always go, let's get together and go against this problem. Let's problem solve together. Let's dreamstorm together, right? To bring it there. So I love that. I think that's a great place to pause and close. And I hope people have had just a taste of your work today and how powerful and how deep it is and how profound and important that is at this moment in time, at all moments in time, right? I think we can use these concepts of healing to make the change that I think a lot of us feel overwhelmed to try and make oftentimes. So thank you for your work, for your book. I know there's a lot that goes into that, and for just everything you do and for being here today. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thanks so much for having me.